are solution providers getting way too far ahead of retailers? I'm not sure who wants to take the first crack at this one.
Oh, where do we start? The answer is yes. Now, you know, a good example is what's going on in AI, and we can talk about AI probably forever. But let's talk about any one of them, I suppose. But just to make the argument more real, talk about Watson's capabilities. IBM Watson, tremendous invention, and can do amazing things. And it's focused on it has been focused for some years on cancer research, pretty advanced stuff. Capable of swallowing huge samples of data and discerning patterns that are important to clinicians everywhere. So that's wonderful stuff. But then trying to relate that to kind of the meat and potatoes problems that retailers have is a tough sell. You have to bring it down to a level that your target is going to understand. And that's in the case of AI, I think that's really what's going on. The problems are even more fundamental than that. Is that retailers, as we all know, have been historically have underspent in technology because they viewed it as supportive of transactional systems. And much of what's happening in the world today is non-transactional in nature. It's more sensing type of technologies. It's all really good and all really interesting, and people like me can get really excited about it. But the fundamental problems with transactional systems are still there. So here's a good example. While everybody's talking about IoT and RFID and those kinds of technologies for retail, the fundamental issue is that the operational systems that manage inventory at the stores are distributed out to store level, so they're not aggregated at enterprise level. And number two, they have more holes than a colander. They leak outrageously, which is why we hire companies periodically to come in and do physical inventory counts. So you got a fundamental issue, and if you put new technology on top of an unresolved fundamental issue, you now have a new, much more expensive fundamental problem. So, you know, that you got to deal with the basic stuff first. So retail is all about the basics first, and then you can do the elegant stuff second. The problem kind of goes back to what we were saying about with Amazon is you can't take your time at this. You can't do this serially, and this is where retailers are really getting caught.
Well, and I think it contributes. I mean, there's definitely a sense of desperation out there. We see it in our data. You know, Steve and I were just looking at it in terms of building a better workforce, and Paula and I just had a discussion about it around customer engagement. And there's definitely a silver bullet attitude out there of if I just buy the right technology, it will solve all of my problems. And when you throw that up against an attitude from the solution providers of I have a fancy whiz-bang new technology that's going to solve all of your problems, then yeah, you're heading to disaster. There's no good outcome there. Yeah, I mean, and it's not just AI, to be fair. I mean, one, there's plenty of situations where retailers aren't even really aware that they're buying an AI-based application. A lot of the personalization stuff that people are implementing or have implemented contain a very large machine learning component, sometimes some deep learning components, right? There's, you know, AI is in the enterprise within retail, but it typically hasn't been an explicit, I'm going out to find an AI solution and I'm going to buy it. It's been, I want personalization, and you know, your personalization is more powerful than the other guy's personalization, so I'm going to buy it. But you know, I mean, I think we see the same kind of hysteria over like chatbots, you know, which is a form of AI because it's the natural language processing and it's the machine learning. What do you respond? But you know, there was an awful lot of hysteria over chatbots, and I mean, I was getting pitched by companies right and left who had the latest, greatest chatbot. You know, will you write about this in Forbes? It's like, no, I'm not, because I think it's a mistake. I don't think that this is going to save the world. I don't think that consumers want to interact with, you know, a machine. What they really want is they want to have their problems solved, and, you know, they want a human element to it, because otherwise they can get self-service without pretending that it's a human being, right? They can get it all on their own. So, you know, all that hysteria over chatbots, you know, we're about to release in our customer engagement survey results that retailers aren't as enamored with that as vendors are. Solution providers are talking about chatbots like it's the next greatest thing, and a lot of retailers are like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
Well, maybe they have a more basic issue that they have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've all done this. We talk to retailers and they'll talk about how they want to integrate digital with physical, and they want to do all kinds of exciting things. It's good and it's useful, but one of the questions that we always get these blank stares on is when we say, "What do you want the customer experience to be? What do you want it to be?" Not all customer experiences are the same. What's right for Dollar General is not going to be the same one that you see in Neiman Marcus, obviously. So what I'm pointing to is that all these things, chatbots, or personalization of marketing, or personalization of the web page presentation, or voice-activated interfaces, or all the rest of it, is all kind of exciting if you want to put on your tech hat. But in the context of the experience that you're trying to create for the consumer, it doesn't actually mean anything until you take that step. Until you say, what do I want the customer to experience when they experience my brand? And then you can start talking about that stuff. They're just tools. They're not the solution. They're just tools that make the total solution better or worse.
Yeah. Well, in the world of shiny objects, no, they will revolutionize the customer engagement and therefore help a retailer figure out what that customer engagement ought to be, which again is a recipe for disaster.
This reminds me of, I remember back in the 80s when, and Paula, you might remember this too, there was all this stuff out there in the marketplaces saying that automation was going to reduce our work week to 38 and a half hours. Do you remember that?
I do, but then Japan came along with their cleaning our clock, and all of a sudden we were working many, many, many hours.
I was going to ask my assembled partners here, how many of you can remember having worked a 40-hour week? I don't remember that.
With a lunch break?
No lunch break for you, buddy. But
no. It's funny when you guys are talking about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
No, I'm saying it's people promise all kinds of stuff as a result of technology. I'm not too sure that most of those technologies deliver the promised results.
Yeah. I read one the other day that said that AI will reach the point where it surpasses the intelligence of the human brain by 2023. That's 6 years from now. But then they went further and said by 2045, AI will be able to surpass all human brain capacity on Earth combined. And I thought, well, by then, are they going to figure out how to stop retargeting me with something that I already bought?
Flora's in Miami. Is that your thing, Paula? Well, I was at a session a couple of weeks ago when they had I can't tell you the name of the technology company. They had a futurist come and speak, one of the people who are paid just to think of the possible future, and he was very proud of some of the things he was saying. One of the things he was saying is that a tremendous number of manufacturing jobs that haven't already been lost are going to be lost. But not only that, but a huge percentage of what we would now call our knowledge workers' jobs will also disappear, all because of AI. And this was wonderful in this guy's mind because it's
free us up.
AI, right? It's going to make companies hyper efficient and da 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 da. I was thinking, what is the purpose of business? When you really get down to it, what are we here to do? Well, one of the things we're here to do is we're here to provide useful employment for the people in the community. Isn't that one of our objectives? And there gets to be a point where you just look at this stuff and you think, this is not actually helping us meet our prime directives. And if your objective is to increase sales and profitability in your company, if you're putting all these people out of work, who's going to buy your stuff, smart guy? If you follow this to its nth degree, it just gets silly really, really fast. So the question then is, what's a reasonable application that actually does help us meet our prime directive? useful work for our employees, a satisfying experience for our customers, and profits for our stockholders. You know, it's just technology for its own sake. It's never done anything.
Well, right. I think we've adequately exposed there is a chasm between the people making technology and the people purchasing at this point there, Nick.
Yeah. I was gonna
well,
say,
you know, it's. I just wanted to say one more thing about voice technology, if that's okay, because it has different uses besides shopping. I did an informal poll on Facebook, because I have a lot of Facebook friends of all different ages and whatever, and I do. And the most interesting.
I believe that's called a humble brag right there, Paula.
It wasn't a humble brag. I just know a lot of people. I've been around.
Just playing, dude.
Anyway, point is, the one who gave me the most interesting answer was a woman who's about my age, maybe a little younger, and she talked about all the things she does with her Amazon Echo, none of which included shopping. You know, so the interesting dynamic is Alexa or Echo or Google Home or whatever, and the IoT, I think, because she tells it to play some music for her. She has a meditation group, and it does a gong. She tells it to turn the lights on and off. I mean, there are some very interesting things you can do with it, and, you know, play music for me. So that seemed like a much more interesting use case than shopping. Because along with the fun part of shopping is the fact that I don't necessarily trust that the prices are staying the same. When a company has a reputation for changing its price every day, why would I just say, Alexa, please go get me, you know, go get me my toilet paper? You know, the truth is, and then Google would be more likely because they're more agnostic, except people are totally paranoid about Google and privacy. You know, it's something they have to solve. So it's much more interesting to use it for, you know, I think that's a much better use case. And that's its own interesting thing, because IoT is going to reach consumer adoption in a practical way long before I think it gets into retail. And once again, retailers are going to be chasing consumers. And I think we got to get out of that place, man, somehow.